It's time to take your artwork to the next level. I'm going to show you how to paint anything you can imagine. Any image you want to replicate, put your own spin on, anything you want to do. I'm also going to be giving away 10 free stencils in this video, so stick around, see how you can get these shipped to your address. If you watch the first couple of skull videos I did, we're going to be finishing up the grill, adding some really cool stuff for the Ford F-150, some rib cage, tools, some automotive parts like this spark plug here. You're going to be able to go and cut these out and see how to get some really great results. You can simply just print these up on your computer by taking a quick, simple picture, like you can see of this wrench here that I cut out. Basically just took a picture with my cell phone, got some shadows kind of the way I wanted it, and then we end up with a great result and able to paint any image that you want by using this same process. So let's get right into it here with this wrench. This is a pretty easy one, I think, to start out for most people. You're going to be able to just have a few key areas where you're going to see kind of the three-dimensional effect that will lift up. And you'll see as we start spraying this that there's just a few areas that we spray, and you basically have a really cool looking wrench, really cool looking image. So I'm going to flash to the other side of the paper at the end of cutting out each one of these stencils. That way you can see the exact cut lines. I'm also going to have these images available on my website, just like the skulls, where you can go down, you can go to the website, go to customairbrushart.com, and you can download these and cut them out. I'm also going to have an image of the back side of the paper so you can see exactly where the cut lines are and where I've left some things connected. So that way, you know, our stencil keeps some of the integrity and it doesn't get kind of stretched or skewed in a weird way, and we're kind of keeping certain parts of it connected so it keeps its sort of original shape, and it's not distorting as we're trying to hold it down and spray the air through it. And if you can imagine for a second, you know, whatever it is that you have desired to paint, maybe you've seen another artist paint something or just photos of something and you've thought, man, that would be so awesome to paint that. You know, you can use this exact technique to either maybe take a picture of what you're trying to paint with your phone, and that way you can kind of customize it and really get the right angles and that sort of thing. Or you can go online and get like a really high def, you know, really well taken, you know, really like a professional photo in some cases, and then you can print it up, and then it's just two steps from there. Like you see here, it's being able to really just kind of trace around the image, but using your X-Acto to do it, and then being able to use the airbrush to spray in some really light, simple patterns, just some quick shading that I'm going to go through in a second here, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you just exactly, you know, a really simple way that you can spray through these stencils and have a a really pro-looking result. And even if you're just starting out, you know, this is a great way to get into it. And you can even use this same technique. You can go through, instead of maybe doing it with the X-Acto, you could put some tracing or some transfer paper behind it, and just, you know, with a pencil you can trace over the image. It'll transfer it through that transfer paper onto what you're painting, and then you can use more of like maybe the freehand technique with doing this, which is really fun to do as well. And we're obviously going to get into that too with this. You know, a lot of what we do here is going to be a lot of freehand technique as well, but the stencil or the templates are just to kind of get everything in place and get it positioned right. You can see here, like with this piston, it's, you know, it's kind of angled to where we can see the side of the rod, and it just has a specific angle, so it shows a cool 3D kind of look. So whether you're going to use a stencil and cut one out like we're doing here today, or using that transfer paper and getting the image on there, and you can kind of use some shielding to get it in, you know, place. Either way, it's just gonna getting it printed up off the computer and then going from there and using it. It's going to help it to be true to form and not have something on it that looks weird that our eyes aren't used to seeing, and you know, can make people maybe kind of question your artwork. So with doing this piston here, I feel like you do see, you know, this is something that you'll see in different artwork from time to time, is pistons and different, you know, maybe some spark plugs that we're also going to be cutting out here. But these I also have as some of my new stencils, the new line that I have at customairbrushart.com. So cutting these out can be really cool. The thing about using just with the paper, and it's something that I've done for so long, it's just kind of come, you know, it's a natural way that I've always done it. But that they do get tore up, and I don't know how many uses you can really get out of them. There's definitely stencils you can cut out of paper, and then you'll be able to use it, multiple times. But the more intricate it gets, like with something like this, it was pretty hard to use this the second. I used it twice, so it was pretty hard to use it the second time just because it was kind of tore up. But if you didn't want to even cut one out, like I said, I'm going to have these available for sale on my on my website, and they have multiple different little fine line like templates, so you can go through and use the outsides, all the different little detailed templates and everything to get everything in place. And it's not necessarily just one stencil like we're doing here. And those last for years and years. I've had some of the stencils that are made out of that same stuff that I'm using, the same kind of plastic mylar. I've had some of them for over 10 years. As I get to the end of this stencil, you'll be able to pause it, and I'm going to show 3 or 4 different screenshots that will show all the different cuts that I'm doing, so you can see exactly how we did this. With doing it on this one in particular that I'm showing, I'm putting all the cuts onto one stencil, and it can just be, a little bit harder to deal with a stencil like that. You'll see the different screenshots I'm going to show at the end is the same way that the stencil is that I have on my website. So it can be just a little bit easier to go through and detail each of the little areas with that. Something like the wrench that we did, that one's probably going to be easier just to have all as one stencil. I guess where you might want to have multiple printouts and different parts of the stencil, different templates, like you'll see in a second here, would be, just something on a little more complex kind of image, like the piston here. So, and you can skip ahead at any point. You'll see the little segments marked out below on the timeline. And I was really wondering too, if you were painting on this grill, what would you want to paint on here? Like, what kind of theme would you want to see on this? Or even if it was maybe your own vehicle or another something that you own that you really like. If you were going to paint something on it, what kind of theme or what kind of images or idea would you want to paint? Or maybe what would you want to see also painted on here that we can do also? So I'd love to hear just what comes to mind when you have inspiration and things like that. So if you're not maybe as familiar with a piston or some of the stuff that we're painting, it'd be good to maybe go online and take a look and see some different images. You can see the first one here we got with the wrist pin and the rings, and then this one's kind of more the side with where it's extruded out and with the rod and everything, and the underside where it's hollow, and just kind of the rod there to line it up. But yeah, this is kind of how the stencils come on my site, and there's other elements of the same stencil too that are pretty cool. So this is the other thing we're going to do is this kind of crazy angle of this skull. We're kind of just looking at like a pile of like bones and parts and stuff that are just kind of just angling downwards on the grill here. And so this one's pretty cool. This is going to be a fun way to do a skull. And you could use any one of these stencils that we're cutting out, just even 1 or 2 of them, to add to any kind of artwork would be really cool looking. So all of these images are available on my website. Just go to customairbrushart.com and you'll see the downloads. You'll get it immediately emailed to you. And I've been getting a lot of downloads. A lot of people go on there from all over the world and download the images that they're either using for a stencil or just a reference image. And yeah, getting a lot of people have been signing up for the emails too. So make sure you go to customairbrushart.com, sign up for the emails, and we're going to be doing some really cool giveaways, a lot of great stuff that you're going to find out through those email notifications and what I'm going to be sending out there. You'll see. So as we're going through, I'm just cutting out the teeth here, and just like in the last skull, you definitely want to leave them connected at the top. I feel like, it looks like I'm going pretty far, like I'm almost cutting them out all the way off, but I'm leaving just a little tab connected. So as you're spraying through the stencil, you can kind of shift that tooth around left to right, and it'll almost pretty much complete that little outline around the tooth, and then you maybe just have that little you know, the little tab area that you left connected will, obviously you probably won't spray through that. You know, you won't be able to get much up there, but it'll just be a little bit that you'll have to freehand, and you'll be able to get kind of a completed look with those teeth there that can be a little harder to do sometimes. So yeah, just going through getting the jaw here, gonna do these bottom teeth. And the same thing, obviously, just kind of outlining them, just kind of tracing around the outline with the X-Acto. And yeah, just leave them connected a little bit. You can kind of peel them up and shadow like one side of them, which you're going to see what we'll be doing. That's what I do. I'll think of where the light's coming in, and then I shadow the back side of that tooth, each one. Just kind of lift up each little one as you go. So this is definitely a little bit of a longer video. This is a little more in depth. I got quite a bit more footage with the rest of this. And these are, you know, these stencils are fairly detailed, I would say. A lot of what we're doing, it kind of runs through, you know, just a lot of different scenarios that you'll run into with trying to cut out your own stencils. So if you can cut these out, you'll be able to cut out anything, you know, any image that you can, you know, that you want to do, anything that you want to kind of recreate, come up with your own kind of artwork. And you know, it's cool to do just kind of a collage sometimes, you know, your kind of stuff that just represents you as an artist and what you like. And I think the more you come up with more creative stuff like that, the more people are going to be attracted to your artwork too. It just kind of brings that originality and stuff that people have never seen. So you can see the back side of it there. If you need to, you can always pause it. I'm going to show the back side of this when I'm done. All the stencils, when I'm done cutting them out, I'm going to show the other side of it so you can see the cut lines. You can pause it if you need to. And also when you get these downloaded on my website, you can see here is the back side of it, the cuts. I used it a little bit, sprayed through there just a little bit. But when you get the image that's downloaded on my website, you'll get this same image too. You'll get the back side of it with the cut lines, so you can kind of double check and know that you're on the same page. So this is just like a little ball peen hammer here. This will probably be like the easiest stencil you'll ever cut out if you end up doing this one. Pretty simple. And same thing when you paint it, it's, you know, you can see the outline of it there. That's really as far as I'm going to go with it. So, and then we'll go to the opposite end of the wrench here, do the closed end or the box end of this wrench. And this one inside there where the hex, you know, pattern is, where it goes around the head of the bolt, that's going to be a little more precise. And so, like I said, if you can do these ones, this little precision kind of work that we're doing with these stencils, you'll really be able to nail anything else that you do, anything else that you want to paint. It doesn't have to be this stuff that I'm painting. And a lot of times on these projects, you know, like with any jobs, sometimes just getting the harder, you know, more tedious stuff out of the way first can be better. Then you can just focus on the painting. You know, if that's what we're doing here, is getting this first part out of the way with, go ahead and just get all the stencils done. That way they're ready to go. The other reason I do this is you can take these, you know, these cutouts, and we'll put a little bit of tape on the back or on the front, and you can lay them out on your project to make sure, you know, kind of get everything laid out the way you want, and try some different combinations. Make sure that it's going to have a cool look artistically, and that it flows nice and everything. So you can even do that before you go into all the detail with cutting out all the details. You can, you know, obviously just print these these images, get them to the right size, and then just cut out the outline of them. And then, you know, just to make sure that it's something that you're going to want to do, and then go from there with cutting them out the rest of the way. So you'll see it, you know, as I'm going through, I'm trying to flip it over every so often so you can see where the cut lines are, and kind of, you know, make sure you're on the same page. You know, you can also slow this down too. You can obviously, you know, down in the settings as you're watching this video, you know, you can go down and slow it down, speed it up, that sort of thing. You know, I kind of sped it up here obviously because, I mean, if I didn't have it at this speed, I mean, this video would be probably 2 or 3 times as long, you know what I mean? So if like something like this, you can obviously see that it's pretty straightforward. We're just kind of going around the outside of it. But on the inside and some of the other little more intricate cuts, slowing it down might help you so you can, especially if you're just having a hard time understanding what's being done or anything, that'll help you out. You can pause it on as I'm flipping it over. You can also slow it down and pause it maybe a little easier as well. So everything we're doing here, we got a couple of wrenches. Now we're moving on to a ratcheting, a torque wrench here. We got, the spark plug, piston. See what else do we got? We got a couple other just random bones. We're going to be doing a really cool looking rib cage. We did that ball peen hammer. We're going to be doing a drill bit and really another, I think, yeah, just another side view of the skull here. So a lot of cool stuff. And then another thing I throw in there is just a couple of bottom jaws that you're going to see that we'll do on here. So those are pretty easy to find and, print out and cut out just the same way we've been doing them. Anything else cool that stands out to you that comes to mind? It looks pretty cool having this setup the way we got this all done here. And the other way to do this, is you could kind of, frame this out in a cool looking graphic to where the inside of it is the skulls and everything we're airbrushing, and then you could do a tape line, kind of like almost like what I had earlier in the video, and mask off the outside, and then so we'd have kind of a cool little flowing graphic around it, and then paint the outside of it red, and then leave our inside artwork, and then create like a shadow around that tape line so it looks kind of 3D. I mean, you could do red or any color you want to do, really. I mean, it's endless what you could do. You could do a color changing chameleon. You could even do just more of like a straight kind of border across it. Maybe do some rivets. There's all kinds. I mean, anything that we're doing, we can always step it up and like take it to the next level with all this stuff. So, but what we're doing here is going to definitely set in some of the basics and just the core kind of skill set that you need to be able to, then do that and really get creative and take it to whatever level you want and anything you can imagine. So you can see the shot of the backside here with all the cuts if you need to pause it there. And we're going to do this screwdriver here, this little Phillips screwdriver, and then we're going to do the spark plug, and then those will be the last two stencils, and then we'll get right into the painting. But at any point, you can scroll down, you'll see the different marks as to where each segment begins with this whole video. You can go ahead at any point, obviously. This one's not too bad. There's pretty minimal cuts on this. Just the ones up here at the top are pretty precise with what you have to do, and I'll show in a minute here the back side of it so you can see. But this one's pretty easy. Should be pretty quick. Not too bad if you wanted to do. You could even stick to more of the simple ones, and you still get a really cool effect. So we'll get this last of the screwdriver finished up. Just kind of get the handle done with some of the round parts, makes it kind of 3D looking, and the flat part where the screwdriver kind of comes out of there. And then we're gonna get going on this spark plug here. So the spark plug is probably looks a little more maybe intimidating or detailed than you would think, but it's not too bad. Getting the cuts on here. What I was able to do was I kind of left the center area of everything connected. I left just a little tab between each segment. I lifted up the X-Acto as I'm going through the middle. It's kind of hard to even see as I'm doing it here, but That way everything stayed connected and I was still able to get all those intricate cuts in there. And I did end up having to kind of cut this apart as I used it, as I used each section, to get the shadow to work right. I mean, sometimes you can kind of fold it over and you'll still get the shape, but sometimes it just doesn't work right. So I ended up having to cut this apart and then make another one for the other spark plug. But that's the cool thing about the Mylar plastic stencils is, it has like its own little detailed template for each part of the stencil that's each part of the, each part of the spark plug rather. And so it works really good. It's a lot more time consuming to create a stencil like that, and probably going to last a little longer if you did make it out of paper. But like the ones that we have, I mean, like I said, some of the ones I've had, they've lasted for more than 10 years now, and I still use them. But yeah, the spark plug one and the piston one is really cool too. The piston one includes the drill bit that we're going to be doing on here, and just has all the individual parts so you can really easily use these. And it's also going to have a detailed printed on card that comes with it, a larger card kind of template that shows a detailed step-by-step kind of tutorial with the order of how to use the stencil. So it's pretty cool. That's going to be pretty fun to use and just have for any artist to be able to grab that and just throw it in wherever you want. It's pretty cool. So I definitely put a lot of time into all these. Even the skull ones have all the individual little detail templates around the outside, so you can go in and use that stuff where you'd normally be probably just cutting it apart, and then it's going to be hard to use unless you're going to try to, I don't know, maybe put all the parts of the paper that you cut out into a bag and kind of put it all together. It can just kind of get turned into a little bit of a mess and hard to use. So, and obviously you're not going to be able to make, maybe plastic stencils for every little thing that you do, nor would you want to, especially if you're just doing stuff for a customer or something. It's going to be easier just to get in there and cut it out with the X-Acto. But you can see here there's quite a bit of details on there, but I'm leaving just the center connected all the way down the center of each little section, so that way it stays together for me the best that it can as when we're just starting with using it and everything. So we're getting this spark plug just about wrapped up here. Last couple of cuts, and you can see pretty detailed all the little individual parts that we cut out on the back there. Looks pretty cool. So, and then I'm going to show you too right now a few other bones and stuff that we're going to be using. So whether it's, it's like a humerus, I think this is like a tibia and fibula. We're going to be doing a rib cage too. You can get a lot of really cool images like we're looking at online on Google. So the rib cage, and there'll be a few other bones that you can get on my website, and you're going to want to print out two of them like we're looking at here, and you want to cut out the back ribs by themselves and then cut out the front ribs that are on your chest there, and then you'll just kind of line up the papers together and then lift up the sections in between each rib on the front and back, and then you'll be able to get a really cool effect here. I'm going to go over that in a second. And this is the other thing you're going to be able to do at this point, which is a nice little break from cutting. You can get everything laid out and start to have some fun with how you want to position everything and start getting everything to kind of come together for you. So I'm going to go over just a quick little exercise to show you that this is the kind of result that we're trying to get for the first step, is to just get everything put up here, what's in front of what and what's behind. And I'm going to show you just with the airbrush just a quick way that I'm doing these shadows. Sometimes as I'm spraying with it, I'm trying to get the best camera angle I can, but sometimes you don't always see every little bit up close, obviously. So as far as how your airbrush is operating and running, so you can make sure that you're getting a good result. And in some of the video, it can be hard to see exactly what's being sprayed through the stencil. So I just want you to see, you know, what you want to be looking for as you're getting set up to do just that. As you're going to spray through your stencil, you got it lined up. This is more or less what you want to be looking for. So you want just really light kind of passes. And I'm going to show you an example of how to do a true fade or a true shadow. So, you know, that's one of the main things that we use with airbrushing is shadows, and one of the cool things that the airbrush can do to make things look realistic in 3D. So what I'm doing is I'm going to start a little bit closer, and I'm going to make each pass overlap one another. So I want my spray pattern, you know, if I start right there and I have that, you know, I want my next one to be just below it and blend into it. And the real true way to do this is each pass that you make, you want to bring the airbrush back gradually. You're going to be, as you're doing each pass, you're going to be slowly moving that airbrush back, and also moving your way down the shadow to you know, make it lighter as it goes down. So you can see here, you know, if you watch my finger, there's very little trigger. And so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to show you an example. So say we're doing the skull eye, you know, I'm just going to go real light. You know, I did maybe like 6 or 7 passes there. That was about it. I'm going to do another one over here for you so you can see. Let's go over and do one more. So you can see there, it's, you know, it almost looks like it's a little bit of like a raised edge here on the paper, and it's like creating this little indentation here. And so that's the same thing we're going to do. I'm going to do just another quick example, and then we'll get right into painting everything here. So I'm going to use this skull just so you can see with the eyes. So I'm going to lift these up out of here and just do just a quick example here so you can get an idea. And it's going to be harder to see. You know, the main way you're going to see what you've done is by lifting up the stencil. So let's make a couple passes here, and where I'm aiming with these stencils too is at first when I'm doing my more closer pass, I'm aiming like right along this area. Like my spray pattern is going like on the actual stencil here, and then I'm getting just the overspray, and then as I pull the airbrush back, then I'm working my way down into it. So we don't want to just go right along, you know, this part and make it super dark, or it's going to start looking stenciled or kind of like a sticker. So I'll show you a quick example. We'll do the same thing again. So we're going to start close, go up here, and then as we work our way back, we'll be moving our way down just a little bit. I'm probably only going to do like 6 or 7 little passes, but really light each time. So here we go. And then you want to do just along the bottom a little bit there, just so it gets in there. You can see there, it's coming in. I mean that was maybe 6 passes or so. We'll do this other eye. So you can see there, I mean, it already starts to, you know, we had painted here on this, but it starts to create the look of the shadows that you want, and it's going to give you a much better result, just so it's not so confusing when you're watching me spray through these stencils here. So here's another look with everything all kind of laid out the way I thought it looked pretty cool. And I got that tape line there just to give me like some shape, and it kind of helped me to angle it down so it looks like it's kind of stacked up, kind of cascading down. And then again, you could also do like a graphic or something around there to where we're leaving the inside with the artwork, and then do like maybe a different color around that outside area. So I'm going to get right in here. I really should have already lifted up that tape line there, but it's no big deal. I'm going to get it out of there in a second. So I'm just going through, we got all these intricately cut stencils, and really I'm just going around and doing an outline around them so they have some placement as to where they are. Now, if you wanted to get really precise with this, you could, line these up and then take the exterior kind of silhouette of your image and use that along the outside. And then, with what I'm doing here, it just creates I think a good way, like especially for beginners to learn this, and it still gives you a really cool result that I don't think people are going to be able to depict what the difference is if you did either technique. So getting in here, got that lower jaw in there that's kind of in the back there, and just going to go through just like we normally do. In the little separated areas that we've cut through, I am trying to spray through there too, because that's going to help give you a lot of little fine line details and stuff. So I want that skull, like I was saying, to be back. So I remove that, and then the skull being in front gives it the effect that it's sitting in front of that jaw. So same thing with the wrench. I want that to be back behind that bone there. So that's like a humerus bone, I think, is what that is. I grew up riding dirt bikes, or riding dirt bikes my whole life, so you learn about the different bones and stuff. But yeah, you got these little intricate cuts. Some of them you have to peel up, and really I'm looking at the image. I'm looking at my photo reference, kind of seeing where the shadows are, especially on this piston. But a lot of mechanical stuff can be pretty easy to do. I feel like it gives you a quicker result that can be more impressive, especially for somebody that's just starting out. And as you're going through it, I'm going to lift it up in here in just a second here so you can see where we're at with this. And I'm using this, any kind of piece of paper. I use that hammer real quick just to shield part so I didn't get so dark along the outside. And just doing the kind of casted areas of the rod there. And so yeah, I'm just referencing my photo and then lifting up certain parts of the stencil and then shading those areas that I see that are shaded on my photo. And again, just using different parts of the paper, create that little center part around the wrist pin, and then the skirt of the piston there and everything. So I'm going to go in and start detailing this skull here, and I'm just going through, you can see, starting to outline these teeth, the back molars. And obviously, as we know, on the bottom of our teeth, it's kind of got that concaved, kind of rough looking area. So I'm just going in and detailing that and just going around the teeth here. It already has most of the details in there, so it makes it real easy for us to just be able to trace around all these and have some really cool looking fine line detail work. So again, I'm really just referencing my photo of this skull and then seeing where like the little ridges are that are above the teeth on the upper part of the jaw, and then on the lower part of the jaw too, it kind of has those ridges. And sometimes when you're looking at a real skull, those may not be as prominent, but it's just something that adds really cool details to skulls, Sometimes with the airbrush you can get just a little bit creative and imaginative and create things that are gonna, be intriguing and more detailed and interesting looking, rather than having to do it so exact to our photo. So we got the other ones lined up here with the on the opposite side here. And again, I should have already removed that tape there, but we're gonna do it right now. And yeah, just go through. That's one of the first steps. You can go through and do this, and it's gonna, it's gonna put you a little bit ahead mentally. You're gonna, we've put a lot of work in with getting this stuff cut out. I'm having to do a little bit of wax and grease remover to remove maybe some of the adhesion from that tape line. And once you get stuff laid out like this, and then you can kind of slowly lift one up at a time and depict which one is behind and which one's in the front. And then just doing that step, I feel like, can really give someone a lot of confidence and being like, wow, this is really coming together, and we're already seeing a really cool result here. Again, you don't want to really just rely on that stencil totally. So as we go through, you'll see some really easy little tips and tricks that I'm going to show you to be able to get a realistic look and help that stencil to kind of just guide you along and keep everything in place and kind of looking true to form here. So we did this other skull here. You probably may have watched that other video that we did where we did that skull, and you want to just be careful. I may have should have already still kept that covered up there, but I kind of did the shadow around it, so I'm kind of just staying away from that skull so I don't have any overspray or anything weird happen with my skull there. And so I kind of had to pull that bone out from behind there because I want that wrench in front, and just do a little shadow on both sides, and brings it right over into the front of that tibia and fibula bone there. So you can see with just those couple of cuts we did with that wrench, I'm just lifting up those two littler parts at the end there, where the wrench goes around the hex of the bolt, and that one's pretty easy to do. Just a couple steps with that wrench, and it actually looks pretty good. So using the business card can work for a lot of things. Any other kind of shielding you can use. I'm using some of the Michael Valley fire stencils that they have. Those have been around for a long time, and those are good for doing the flames, but for a lot of things I use those for. And I'm going to get in here with some of the bones and do a little more freehand, kind of get this shadow done here, and then on the bones there, they're going to go with a little more freehand. And I'm going to go around and do this too, just get inside and try and spray through all the little cut lines on that spark plug, and it's going to, just doing that alone will actually give us a lot of the detail in there. And so I'm going to go in here and start getting these bones all done here, do some cracks and some little shadows and stuff. So you can see here where I had to kind of cut that stencil apart in order to just get that one little segment. That's where the stencils that I'm using, they have all those little individual segments that are lined up with the end of the spark plug, so you can get it lined up and just go through and get each little part done, and then do some more shadowing and freehand to kind of finish it off there and give it a nice finished look there. So you can see each little part, even right here, like the little crush washer that comes on these spark plugs. I'm trying to get in there and just do that little fine line there, and then take that and then the little end part and just make things look recessed and more 3D. So with just like with the skulls that we did, the color that I'm using here, or it's not really a color, it's just black with just a little bit of root beer added to it. And the root beer can be pretty overpowering. You can end up putting, you know, a decent amount of black, and then if you put just barely too much root beer, I mean, if you go just more than a few drops, it'll totally cancel out that black. You'll just have the brown. So I don't like to do just quite, that stark black, because it can create kind of a mucky, mucked up kind of dirty look, and just that little bit of root beer in there just kind of slightly changes the tone and makes it gives it quite a bit better of a look than just the solid black colors, and trying to keep that transparent and everything. So you can see here I'm using the exterior, kind of the silhouette outside of that stencil, to go in and just shade the underside, and then here I'm going through and doing those little ridges where the spark plug cap seals around there. And yeah, using this outside part really makes it so just that it gives it the rounded look. It makes that spark plug look kind of cylindrical. And we're going to go in and do the threads here. So that the threads, I'm going really close together, and I've created the angle that I like, and then I'm just slowly moving it more towards the center of the spark plug as I go. So each little thread line that I make is being covered by that stencil, so I'm not, adding more overspray to the ones I've already done. So I could have started in more where my thumb is now, and then brought it backward. That you can do it that way too. But sometimes you end up getting overspray on each of those lines that you did, and it makes it not so defined. So you can see there, just with these last few little details, coming along pretty good. We got a pretty good looking little stencil there, and then you can see about halfway through, if you look at the image reference, or on anything that's kind of reflective and round, you'll see where it has these long shadows that go down the length of it, and they're just kind of in some weird spots that makes our eyes, feel like makes your eyes think that you're looking at something that's more round like that, like we're used to, and where we're used to seeing shadows. And then I'm just going through with the X-Acto here, like I do on a lot of the images, and I'm going in kind of above that little shadow, and then so again, looking at our reference, you'll see where the shadow is, and then you'll see areas where we have these little highlights. And so that's what I'm doing with just tracing over it, just doing some fine line detail with those. I've got this sped up, so I'm going a bit slower as I'm doing these to try and be as precise as I can. But it creates a good effect, and I would say even with what I'm doing here on a lot of these videos, most of the time I usually take a lot of the artwork to, quite a bit further with doing like texture and more of this kind of fine line, highlights. I may get some, taking that mixture that we use with the black and root beer and add just a little bit of that to some white, and that's going to be a good way to do the highlights. Sometimes if you come in with just bright white, it can look a little off. You want those highlights to blend with the color of whatever you're using. So even if it's whatever color, if you're painting something more bluish or red or whatever color, you're going to take some white and then add just a little bit of that blue to it, and then go in and do your highlights. Because doing just bright white on stuff, it can make it give it just this unrealistic kind of look, to where it looks obvious that there's some weird going on there. And here, just going in, doing some of that texture. There's some really good texture stencils that I don't have, but they're made by Gerald Mendez in the Art Tool company, and those stencils have been around for a lot of years. A lot of airbrush artists have used those, and you can use those especially on the skulls. So I didn't do any of those. I didn't do any texture on these skulls here, but if you did, you could, again, everything just needs to be super light, and then you can even go in with the X-Acto and do some little highlights on those little texture spots and give it a lot of really cool realism. And so going through here, going to do this, getting this end of this torque wrench done here. You can see just the little square part of it, the little kind of cubed in there where the socket goes on, and then it has a few just little. This one's not too bad to do either. And you can, I think the shadows where they're placed on something like this is, especially for a beginner, it's going to be obvious where those shadows and those lines are, and how you can make something look realistic and have a cool three-dimensional look with very little time and effort. So yeah, with a lot of these stencils, this is where I was saying, like, you end up having to kind of bend things around and peel it back, and it can definitely get kind of tore up to where it's, it can be harder to use. That's where a stencil like this, like the Mylar ones like I've been creating, you can just keep using them. You can still bend them, and you can bend them back. So I'm just getting the base of the little drive here, the little 3/8 or ½ inch drive, or whatever you have, and going through and just making that look square and cubed. And then again, just using the outside template. Always good to make sure you don't, make sure you save that, so you can go around and along the bottom of a lot of stuff, even with the skulls and the bottom of the jaw, wherever we're doing, it's going to give it that rounded look, or just gives it some, like a three-dimensional kind of look there. So yeah, I'm just looking at my photo reference and just seeing what details are where. Again, if you're not familiar with some of these tools and stuff, you can, just having a good photo reference is going to be really good. Just makes sense out of what you're doing, and you're not kind of eliminates any confusion. So you can get all these, even this one, all these stencils we're doing, you'll find on my website there, customairbrushart.com. So going in and making the box stand wrench look like it's sitting in front of that torque wrench there. We got kind of some weird angles going on here, so we're having to kind of finagle with it, but ends up working out. You can get it to work for you. See, I'm just trying to extend that wrench and make it look like it's, still keeping it looking like it's straight there. So we'll go in here with the X-Acto and do some little highlights. Kind of a back and forth sort of way of doing it. You'll kind of do some highlights, and then you'll realize you maybe need some more shadows here and there, and then vice versa. So this is a good little trick too, just using a straight edge to get the little highlights with your X-Acto a little more precise. And I'm just going in here and doing that little chrome, little steel ball detent there, that little spring-loaded little ball detent that holds the socket on, and then just going around just creating like a square there. That one should be pretty easy. And then along here too, where this part kind of protrudes outwards and where it can spin. And just, yeah, there's little details here and there. I guess that some of this I was just going to let play through each, section to section. I don't want to overload you with too much information, but just trying to got quite a bit more stuff filmed with this one, so just quite a bit more to show, I think, for people to follow along with. Some of the few last videos I did were a little shorter and a little more limited to the techniques and everything. So just using a straight edge to kind of get those shadows too, to where I'm not, I'm not placing that card to where it's touching the actual item that we're painting. I'm kind of just lifting it up a little bit, so I'm just getting these kind of a little more faint shadows, but still trying to keep them straight. Trying to do those freehand can be a little hard, and you want the part that's beside it to still look shiny, because it's kind of a chrome or stainless steel kind of look we're going for. So I got two there. I'm trying to block off the torque wrench as it goes across there, and then got to kind of get creative with doing some of the shielding and getting everything in place. That's more of the easier part, just getting everything to extend out. And as you're looking at this, from different angles, especially with what I'm doing, I mean, you may be painting on just a flat surface, but as you get to these, kind of like with this is kind of this weird beveled edge and everything. It can kind of make the images look bent or something, but it still looks pretty cool. It's, as you're walking by it, or as you're seeing the video that we flash through, you'll see what I'm talking about. It'll go from looking bent to looking straight to bent again. So I'm going in on these wrenches. If you have a wrench and you look at it, you can see a lot of little texture, and kind of where the wrench gets cast, it's sometimes sand cast, so you can see these little teeny bits of texture all over. So that's what I'm doing here. I went and added some small little spots with the airbrush, and then I'm just going in and creating the little shimmer with the X-Acto, with doing some highlights. So with this whole technique, the way I'm doing this, when in the next video or so, I'm gonna get this thing will be all clear coated, and I'm gonna show you what it really looks like with that silver metallic under it. And this is a really cool way to do artwork, to do a lot of different projects. You could even mask off just a section and just spray this metallic, a little bit of clear coat, and then you're just wet sanding that clear coat to where it's all surfaced and smooth again. And then we're going in here and just doing some of this kind of monochromatic artwork like we're doing here. And in the next couple videos, you'll see me. I'm going to do a skull that's just going to be an opaque white color, just like we're used to seeing bones or skulls. So that can have a little bit of a different look. They both look really cool, but they're definitely there's definitely some noticeable differences here. When I get into doing the white ones, we're going to use some different like tones of the colors of the bone that we're trying to create. Where with this, this is a little easier and it's going to be simpler for someone to use, especially as a beginner, but it's still going to be a technique that anyone at any level is going to be still using. You know, people that are really advanced are still using the same technique. And the thing with it is, like what I'm doing here is I'm shining a light on it because it allows you to see those highlights, because that metallic really reflects and really shimmers. So when we get this artwork done and it's all clear coated and we're looking at it out in the sun, we're going to see those highlights. I mean, they're going to be really vibrant and really super detailed. And it's like from some angles, you're going to see the sun or the light come and kind of flash out some of the detail in the artwork. But then as you continue to look at it from a more extreme angle or from different views, and as the light's hitting it from different angles, you know, you're going to get this really cool, vivid looking detail, you know, a lot of depth in a really three-dimensional look. But then as you, like I said, as you just look at it as it's a vehicle that's driving by, or you're just looking at it as the light's hitting it from different angles, it really changes and moves and you know, disappears and then comes back and looks really cool and detailed and vibrant. And then so it's pretty cool. It's just a little bit different, as opposed to like if you're looking at a skull that was done with just the solid opaque white, you know, it's not as much, there's not really much of a change as you're looking at it from different angles. I mean, obviously, you know, the sun can hit it and kind of wash it out still a little bit, but it's just two different ways of doing it. You know, as I've done the white skulls over the years, you know, I would say those are a little bit more time consuming because you're having to really achieve more of the photorealism and these different like colors of the bone, and just a little more work, but both of them can look really cool. And whether you're doing skulls or whatever you're doing, that's just something to keep in mind. When you're doing something on a background that shimmers, you know, it can really give it a cool look that kind of disappears or even changes colors from certain angles and stuff. So you can see here we got these ribs laid down, and I went over a little bit of how I did that with you know, doing two different printouts. You know, you print up 2 pages of the same size image, and you'll just kind of, you know, after you cut them out, you know, you line them up, you know, just line the papers, the corners back up, and it can, you know, it creates a really cool look. I mean, if you can see these little like squares that almost got airbrushed in there, and then I used, you know, the front ribs. I took out the back ribs, and then I went in and just created the shape of those front ribs. And it's I'm going to do the other side with the same thing, and you'll see a little more detail. I think I skipped filming that part of this side of it, but we're going to do it in a minute here. I'll show you the other side, how it was done. It's really cool. And these ribs, I'm working on a stencil here to do these two. That'll be a multi-part stencil that'll be really cool looking. So just going through and doing some cracks and little shadows. Gives it a cool little three-dimensional look, and then I'm getting in there and doing those back ribs too, doing some details in there, trying to keep that a little more fine, a little more minute with the details looking like they're further back there. Go and do little spots, some little pitting and texture and stuff. So yeah, you can see here I got those 2 sides done there and got the other parts laid out. You know, obviously I'm printing out more, you know, multiple pictures here. And we got this side view of this skull. This one's pretty cool. So we didn't cut this one out in the beginning, but this one's pretty easy. You know, it just kind of has the nose, the sides of the teeth, and just the one, you know, the eye on the one side there. So this one's pretty easy. You can go get the free download of this one and all these images on my website. And yeah, just going in here and just doing, this one's a little bit of a different process. You're trying to think of where that light's coming in, and I'm having to use the top of the eye, you know, the cutout there of that eye. I'm trying to get the eyebrow, see here, I'm trying to get that eyebrow to look like it's rounding down. So that's why with the Mylar stencils that I've made on my site, they come with a different eye cutout along the side, so you can go in and do all those little details. So just like we do the teeth, just kind of getting in there and going in between them, in between the cuts of each tooth, and then you can lift them up. This one's easy because, you know, generally the light's coming down, and then we're just shading. You know, we'll lift up one tooth at a time, and then just shade the bottom side of it, so it looks like it's coming out from the shadow, and then as it's rounding, we're seeing the top part of it that's closer, getting the light shined on it. So we'll go in here and do like we normally do some of the little ridges above the teeth. Sometimes with doing a skull like this, if you haven't been used to doing one, I know for me, when I was doing this, I had to really study that picture and really look at it. And the particular image that I printed, you know, it looks like it was taken in the, like at night or something, and they just tried to get some kind of creepy looking lighting on it. So sometimes you got to just do what's best for your project and where your light's coming from. You know, sometimes if something looks like it's like uplit or backlit, it might not make sense with your artwork and the way, you know, with how compared to all the other images around it look. So we got that skull finished up, and if you need to go back and slow that down, you can kind of see where I'm bringing the cracks inside the eye socket or in the different, you know, on the cheek or different portions of it. And then here, what I'm doing is just kind of a different version, I guess, of what we did the first time. So, you know, I already had everything laid out. I went around it, and then now I'm just going in and putting each item in there individually and making it look like one's in the front and one's in the back and that sort of thing. So there's multiple ways to do all this stuff. And then here with this ball peen hammer, this one's pretty easy. I mean, I'm just, this kind of hammer, again, like the round cylindrical kind of shadows that you're doing on certain parts of it. And it just, these just have on both edges, they have kind of like a beveled little edge on it, like on the hammer. And yeah, most of that one's pretty easy. You can kind of see what the steps are there. And then the bone here, let's see. I think this is a, yeah, I'm not sure what kind of bone that is, but probably a humerus again. So I'm just looking at the image and the references and seeing where these shadows are. And we're going to go up really close after I'm done with this so you can see some of this detail. And you can see there, I think I'd kind of maybe, I think I may have skipped past that where we did the drill bit there. You can see some of the details, but with the piston stencil that I have, the Mylar piston stencil on my site, you can see there we have to add a little bit of reducer just to get the fine line, to get some of those cracks. If you're not able to get the real fine line cracks and little pitting and stuff, just add a little bit of reducer, shake it up, and then should be good to go. And that again, we'll have a cool little multi-part stencil that goes along with the piston stencil that we have them available on the website there. So yeah, just going in and having some fun, doing some little pitting and texture and cracks and. So you'll see here I went in and finished up the hammer, and that one's pretty easy. And you'll see from the image all the different areas. And I'm gonna zoom in here just to show you kind of up close what's going on with that X-Acto and what it's doing. And so I'm usually, in a lot of cases, I'm going like kind of below like some of the different cracks and stuff, and like on the beveled edge there, going right on there, and any of the little sharp edges, like there on the drill bit, and just kind of below any of the little dots in the pit, the pitting and stuff. So I'm gonna I'm gonna try to get in here and zoom in a little closer certain parts of the video just so you can see that stuff and see that with this sort of stuff, with mechanical items or skulls, you know, it can be just it's a little funner, I think, because it doesn't need to be quite so exactly, you know, perfect and everything in every way. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do this. Sometimes if you make a little mistake, you know, a lot of times nobody's going to notice it. There's ways that you can, you know, work it into the art and just, you know, make it be something that still fits with it. So you're going to do this, getting the little piston, getting the piston and the rod done here. So yeah, with trying to do the, you know, I ended up using this stencil twice. So I did get a couple of uses out of this one that's out of paper here, but it was it was a bit of a pain in the butt to use a little bit, you know. I was having to had to cut out a lot of parts of the video because it was just hard to go in and get everything lined up as I was going. But once it was in there, then I just used other, you know, some of the other shields and stuff I have to do my shadows and details and a little bit of freehand. You can see there, kind of just got everything in there, and then from here we're able to go in and finish it up with other types of shielding and stuff that I'm using. You know, with any of this artwork, we can always kind of continue to take it to the next level. You know, there's always going to be more and more detail that you can add, and you obviously don't want to add too much detail to where it's going to start, you know, having a, you know, kind of almost defeating the purpose, kind of going against having a good look. But you know, the more you can hone in on and focus in on these little details within your photo reference, you know, you can continue to try and replicate that stuff, and you're gonna probably see, you know, more and more of a refined, almost photorealistic result that you're getting in front of you. So I'm just kind of going back and forth with seeing what makes sense and what needs to be done as I'm looking at the photo reference. Or I think with this one, like we were saying, it has a little bit of a weird photo, so I'm just trying to do, what I think looks good from the light angles. And this eraser I'm using here, you should maybe try and pick one of these up if you can. They work really good for all these highlights, and it just kind of helps to almost blend some of the shadowing and stuff. So it creates a highlight, obviously, is the main thing, but then it's also kind of, blending and fading into that airbrush shadow. So yeah, those are called those ones I get are at the see, I go those I think I get from the Blick Art Center or Blick Art stores, and see they're made by Prismacolor, and it's, yeah, just the magic eraser from Prismacolor. The older ones, if you can find the ones from Sanford, they used to have one that was like a peel off one that was like a pencil, and it just had a longer, you use it like a pencil, but it has the eraser in it. And they stopped making them for some reason, but those worked really good. And there's a few other brands that make a similar one that they just came out with, and there's multiple erasers that you can check out and kind of experiment with, that you'll see that come in a pencil form or just in a square like that. But I've always liked those. I feel like that's something, when you are taking this to kind of the next level, so to speak, and you're trying to go as far as you can, just to see what you can do and how far you can kind of push it. Those erasers, the X-Acto highlights like we're doing, as many techniques as you can bring into it to try and refine it. You could also get some, you could bring in maybe a little bit of white in here for your highlights as well, but it can tend to make maybe a little bit more of a mess. I would almost go about it with getting it as far as you can with the eraser, the X-Acto, and your airbrush, and then from there, if you need to go in and do some, any white kind of detail to create those real crisp highlights, you can do that. I think after you've gotten it as refined as you can with everything else. Like I was talking about with doing them, with doing them like on a solid opaque background or just an opaque white skull, obviously you're going to be using that a little bit more, but you're still going to be using these same techniques to kind of get it as far as you can. So I hope you guys are enjoying these videos. I've tried to get as much detail as I can. I'm trying to get a better camera, or even a couple of set, like a multi-set camera, to where we have multiple views on here. So let me know what you think, if that would be something that you think would help as we're going through these different projects and stuff. Alright, so see, I just wanted to show you some of these stencils for, like, for example, this one right here that we did a few videos back. And got all these, multiple different detail templates that go along with this one. It's pretty much exactly the way I cut them out of paper, except for these are going to last, obviously, a heck of a lot longer. I've had some of these that have lasted, up to more than 10 years or, 10 years or more. And so, yeah, pretty cool. And then, this is kind of a prototype. I had to test these out, make sure they were going to line up right with the other detailed templates that I'm going to show you right now. So I actually added a little bit more to that one even. And let's see here. Grab this one real quick. So I'm just going to show you just some of the other little templates along the outside here. Kind of this one right here is kind of for to get the shadow above the teeth on the top jaw and on the bottom teeth as well, to make it look like it's kind of bulging out of the jaws there. And these are kind of for, if you're first starting out, especially, it helps you to get those fine lines in between the teeth. And you can see the top of the eyes there, jaw, the bridge of the nose. These kind of go to where they're in between each tooth, so you can get the shadow on the back side of each tooth and not have it interfere with the surrounding teeth, and really get that three-dimensional look. A few other templates here. I'm going to go over in some of the next few videos how to use these and how they all line up with each part of the main stencil. So, but I really appreciate everybody that's ordered these so far, and hope everybody that got them is enjoying them. But I just wanted to show you those real quick. Like, I got the piston one that we did here in the video that I need to get some more. I've had these getting sent out, and I need to get more of them cut. But this is the piston, the one that it comes with the drill bit as well. So that's the piston drill bit combo that's pretty detailed and works really good too. So I'm going to be going over how to use these. And if you want to just skip past all the cutting of them yourself and be able to win one of these, I'm going to be giving away 10 of them. So you have a pretty good chance of winning one of these. And I'm also going to be giving away a free class to one of those 10 winners. So if you take a look at my website, customairbrushart.com, I've got some new classes up there, some beginner classes that are pretty affordable. And to anyone who wants to try and improve their skill set as an artist, and also bring in some more money and kind of get set up so you can start working with clients, doing commissioned artwork on different projects and different items, and selling just your own artwork in whatever format that may be. This is going to be really great to help you to get to the to the point that you want to be with your career, doing good with making money with artwork. And so all you have to do is be subscribed. Please leave me a comment below as to what else you want to see on the channel, what else you would like to see gone over or covered, or something that maybe you're having a problem with or not sure of. And so so like, subscribe, comment, and then also share the video. And there'll be these directions and everything down below, and it'll also be on my website, which is where you're going to go to enter the contest. So you're going to go to the contact page, and you'll see right at the top it'll say sign up for exclusive discounts and everything. And so you'll sign up for the email list, and below it also has just a few questions that I'm trying to get some info from with everyone, just with where you're at with your artwork. And it's just a couple of questions, so if you could just answer them as thoroughly as you can, and then you'll be all entered. And I'm going to be having this open and collecting entries through January, and then I'll be announcing the winner the first week of February. So I've got quite a few pictures and stuff on my website. I still need to get some pictures of my actual stencils on a few of the categories that are there. So I'm going to be updating those pretty soon. But I've just the ones that I've cut, I haven't even got a chance to get pictures of, so I've had to just ship them right out. And been a little bit hectic with that. But I really appreciate everyone that's bought those, and I hope you've gotten them and that you're enjoying them. And so these are all really detailed, a lot more intricate, I would say, and user-friendly, and gonna move your artwork forward a little bit quicker and easier than I think a lot of the airbrush stencils that we see and that we've seen for quite a while. I really appreciate you checking out the video, and I hope it can move you forward with whatever you're trying to paint and move you forward with doing what you want to do. I don't think anybody's here to be trading their time and their life for money. And so to be able to do what you want and enjoy and get paid is an amazing thing. You know, I've been lucky enough to be able to do it, and I still can't even believe that it's been, you know, reality for me for the past over 10 years. So I really appreciate you watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video.